Alrighty guys, it is Man here today, and as always, if you guys haven't somewhat caught up to where Dragon Ball Super is as of episode 127, this video is a more general topic, but it will contain light spoilers about many of the events of the Tournament of Power, and it will be talking about many of the events of the older events of Dragon Ball as a whole, as I will be analyzing numerous characters throughout the Dragon Ball franchise, and I will go in depth with many things today. So without wasting any more time, let's get straight into this video. So what is the best way that I can phrase this for you guys? Well, I think the best way I can put this together is to say, do Dragon Ball fans want what they actually ask for? And this is a huge topic because every time that a Dragon Ball Super episode airs, I go on to Konzenshu to see what a lot of people are talking about in forums. I often go to my comment section to see what people are talking about on my reaction video. I post polls on the community tab so I can get a general understanding of how much people liked every single episode of Super, because I really want to understand what the community thinks about all the popular opinions, the unpopular opinions, and more, and I think it can help us understand each other a lot better as a community. And because of this, I've often seen a lot of Dragon Ball fans want things in years past, and when Super gives it to them, regardless of how good or bad they write the characters, it seems like Dragon Ball fans, in many cases, and I can't speak for everybody, but in many cases, Dragon Ball fans are often unhappy with what they actually get, even though, in theory, this is often what they've been asking for years. So, the first character I want to talk to you about is Android 17. And the reason why Android 17 is a very interesting character in all of this is because in many ways, Android 17 is absolutely everything that what Dragon Ball fans have wanted. Now, the one thing that we can't say about Android 17 is that he is not an original character. So, if you wanted an original character to participate with Universe 7 for the Tournament of Power, you don't really get that with 17, and you don't really get that with any of the Tournament of Power members, because in general, all of the characters that are in the Tournament of Power are characters that we've known for years and decades, so it doesn't have the same appeal as Goku and his friends meeting a new person, like let's say a Jocko, who was obviously in the Jocko the Galactic Patrolman manga, and he fought in Resurrection of F, and if Jocko had fought with Universe 7, that would have had a much more original feel, as opposed to getting a lot of the throwback characters of years past. But the thing that made 17 unique is because he was a character that was essentially completely written out of the Dragon Ball story. He was a character that the last time we saw him was when people were trying to gather energy from Majin Buu, and he held up those two guys so that they could donate their energy towards Goku. And Toriyama said, you know, in an interview that he had an inspiration for 917 as being this park ranger, but the show never really actually showed this until Super actually brought it into fruition. And the thing that made 17 a more polarizing character throughout the Tournament of Power is that he was one of the most integral characters in it. So, although Dragon Ball fans have often said, let's put these old characters to rest, let's bring in a new character, and let's let this newer character do something and do things that the other characters aren't used to doing, Android 17 in many ways was the perfect example of a character who was not a part of the main cast. He came back, he was one of the strongest characters, and he actually did something extremely important to allow all of the other members of the Tournament of Power to survive. He was more popular in the Tournament of Power in many ways than Gohan was. And if you guys know anything about Gohan, that he's one of the most popular Dragon Ball characters out there and defeated a major villain. And the fact that in many ways 17 actually got more shine than Gohan actually upset a lot of Dragon Ball fans, and I will honestly admit, I'm one of those people, and I'll be unbiased in saying that I definitely felt that way about 17's development, even though they ultimately did a good job with him. And the thing that makes 17 unique is the fact that he was a character that had already an established relationship with Android 18, so in many cases we often just looked at 17 as part of the 17-18 duo instead of actually looking at him as an individual character that does things in his own right. He was always lumped with 18 as a character, and if you play Dragon Ball FighterZ, even on that video game, 17 and 18 fight together as they just did in the History of Trunks, and the same way that they've done in many other parts of Dragon Ball fiction. So obviously, looking at 17 and 18, this was a time where both 17 and 18 as individuals had a big role throughout the Dragon Ball story. And the next thing I wanted to talk to you guys is actually dealing with Kale, Caulifla, and Kefla. And I'll kind of talk about all three of them as one. And I will be honest and admit to you guys that the writing for Caulifla, Kale, and Kefla is terrible. Like, in many ways, Kale is not an original character. She's just a Broly with lipstick. Caulifla is, I mean, I don't want to use the term Mary Sue, but she got a lot of things a lot easier than a lot of the male characters who had to work hard for it, and in many ways she's just kind of generic in just having a brash personality, a tsundere as a lot of people refer to her as, and Kefla is just a combination of both of them that looks way too much like Kale to be considered an original looking character. So when you look at Kefla, Kale, and Caulifla as the three female characters that really took Dragon Ball Super by storm, in many ways, they were a poor answer to what Dragon Ball fans have kind of always wanted. Because if you guys remember, I mean, for years, and I'm talking about in fan fiction, I'm talking about before Super, before all of this, after GT, which Pan was a very poor excuse of trying to fulfill this role as, Dragon Ball fans have often looked for that one female character, specifically a female Saiyan, that could compete with the male characters. And for the longest time, the closest approximation we had this in terms of the main characters was Android 18, and really 18's power was only really relevant during the Android arc. After that, her power was kind of thrown to the side, and the same thing for 17, even though Super brought him back and gave him a massive power-up. Now, personally, guys, if I were to put my insight on this, I don't hate them as characters, but I definitely do feel like they feel like forced. I do feel like looking at Kale, especially Kale because she's essentially just a Broly clone, it doesn't seem like they were organic characters that were supposed to be a part of the Dragon Ball story. It did feel the entire time that Toei was like, let's make these two female characters really strong, so much so to the point where they're way stronger than Kaba, even though he knew how to go Super Saiyan before all of them. And for Kale, there's somewhat of an excuse because she's supposed to be this Broly-like character with all this potential. For Caulifla, it was just, we need her to be a strong character to compete in the Tournament of Power. And because of this, I can definitely understand why Dragon Ball fans wouldn't want it, but at the same time, this was something that a lot of people have also wanted. And if there was one more thing I could talk to you guys about, is we gotta talk about the Tournament of Power in terms of all of the characters that were involved. So in many cases, a lot of Dragon Ball fans have wanted, you know, the Tournament of Power, or not just the Tournament of Power, but the Dragon Ball storyline to have older characters kind of come back and kind of resurrect their fighting roles throughout the Dragon Ball series. And although the Tournament of Power has had a poor usage in terms of making certain characters dominate way too much and making certain characters, you know, complete punks, in a way they kind of address this again. Because if you really think about it, throughout all of the arcs that Super has had, there's never been an arc that anywhere near resembled having so many characters fight at the same time. I mean, the closest to it would have been the Resurrection of F arc, and that was fighting against Frieza soldiers. So there wasn't the same impact as fighting against individual powerful guys from other respective universes that are all trying to survive in this do-or-die tournament setting. So, because of all of that, although I do understand that the writing is always going to dictate how people are actually satisfied with the product, I do think at the end of the day, as Dragon Ball fans, I don't think we can deny that Toei is at least trying to satisfy Dragon Ball fans. Maybe their execution isn't the greatest, and maybe they have a poor writing in certain aspects that obviously turn off Dragon Ball fans to what they're giving us. But at the end of the day, I do say and give them credit saying they're trying to appease a lot of the thoughts that Dragon Ball fans have had, as they've put a lot of fan fiction elements and things that Dragon Ball fans have always thought about for years, and actually brought them to life, especially in bringing back Future Trunks, which was something that a lot of people have wanted for years. So, with everything else said, please remember to rate, comment, and subscribe. And remember, as I always say, to have a great day, guys, and answer the big question. Do Dragon Ball fans actually want what they ask for? Let me know.